Welcome back to Edge of Intelligence, the show where we explore how AI, automation, and strategy intersect to power real-world innovation. I'm Carl Owen, a fractional CIO and AI advisor at Protelligent. Today's guest is reimagining how companies use data to accelerate growth. Sid Chaudhary is the founder and CEO of Intempt, a platform that combines customer data, predictive analytics, and automation into what they call a growth OS. It's like giving every business an AI copilot for acquisition, conversion, and retention. Sid, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Carl. My pleasure. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Let's start with your journey. What inspired you to create Intempt, and how did you see an opportunity to unify CRM, analytics, and AI into one platform?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think it happened over the course of several years of building software. So I learned most of my marketing technology at a well-known company called Adobe. I was brought into the company as part of a series of acquisitions they made to go from being a creative cloud or the creative cloud in the industry to having a enterprise marketing cloud. I worked for them as a product manager for many years and had the opportunity and the pleasure to build software and be, in front of customers in e-commerce and in fin services, SaaS companies for many years, and learning firsthand about, how you spent a dollar to hopefully make a few in the online world. These were the earlier days of a lot of online shopping. We're not the earliest of the days like the 2000s, but we're talking the 2010s. And yeah, so I happen to have a firsthand experience into the differences between what we call B2C or e-commerce CRMs versus B2B or SaaS CRMs that were more sales-led versus marketing-led. And, exposure into these details led me to, build my first company, which had a smaller ambition and a smaller footprint, and then my second company, which now brings us to the Growth OS, where over many years we've built the data fabric, which is the CRM or the customer data platform fabric, and then we built a series of tools that marketers need to use, such as analytics, experimentation tools, and customer journey tools to do the day-to-day job. And over the last 18 months, of course, do it with a AI copilot or an AI co-marketer, co-seller, so that you've got to do, less of, the so-called dirty work yourself.
Well, Intempt isn't just another marketing automation platform. It's built on the idea that every customer interaction can be learned from and optimized using AI. I'd love to unpack what that looks like in practice. How would you describe Intempt's mission?
Yeah. So, I think you stated it perfectly. E-commerce has known this well for forever, that every single customer interaction, whether it's an ad click, whether it's a site click, whether it's an email click or an SMS click, can be learned from. And the next experience can be made far more relevant. And sticking to these fundamentals of marketing leads to a more personalized experience and leads to a higher converting experience, a more retentive experience. And so your customer buys your first product with you and then the next product and so on. And you've got to, you're able to fight the battle of ad spends to acquire a customer only going up in time. And you're able to fight that battle with having your conversion rates and your retention rates keep up with the rising costs of ad spend. So this has been well understood in e-commerce software, e-commerce shops for decades. I think there's been a major shift in SaaS companies over the last 10 years where we've seen, SaaS, if you only look back about 10 years, SaaS was primarily sold. In other words, you had an enterprise sales team, you had an enterprise seller, you had a, someone who's account executive, he had a solutions engineer or a sales engineer typically, and they'd kind of team up and go into the account and do the elaborate set of personalized demos and get them to sign a 100K ACV contract or a 50K ACV contract upfront, and that's how SaaS was sold for 80% of SaaS was sold that way, just about a decade ago. But over the last decade, we've seen this model erode, bit by bit. We've gone from seeing large ACV deals sold up front to what we call product-led deals, where You try a product and you buy like a little bit of it, maybe an essentials version, and then you upgrade to the pro version, or maybe eventually into the enterprise version where you engage a sales rep to purchase the product. Now, Slack famously made this model very popular, where the enterprise sales reps wouldn't engage until there were 20, 40, 50 users inside of an organization using Slack. Then they'd come in and give a volume discount and sort of get the deal that way, without a lot of friction, without an RFP, without having to fight several other vendors for the deal, because the product was already adopted. I think because of this big shift in how SaaS software is being bought now instead of sold, a lot of the e-commerce principles where every single product click could be learned from suddenly started to matter, right? Because you had SaaS products that were being used before they were being sold, right? Much like e-commerce, where you would use the website and you would browse and explore and add products to cart before you would ever buy them. You were now able to have a lot of the funnel in the SaaS buying process was now measurable, trackable, and personalizable. And this turned out to be very, very relevant to a SaaS seller or a SaaS marketer that's trying to understand, well, is this company really looking to expand into an enterprise contract where it makes sense for my sales reps to go in and spend time? So I think so. The SaaS, this gave rise to sort of SaaS CRMs, or what we called PLG CRMs, or product-led growth CRMs, and now they're giving rise to what we call signal-based CRMs, or signal platforms, to do what they're calling warm outbound, or you go out when you've got enough signal on the prospect. So this, what I call this convergence of e-commerce buying processes and SaaS buying processes, allowed a company like Intempt Technologies to build a growth OS, which would have very similar buying stages and buying patterns that look very much like B2C buying patterns, even if you're selling to the enterprise. So this was the opportunity that I saw. We started out in e-commerce and mobile apps, and then and now SaaS, because we see some of the same product fundamentals and the product principles apply, which is try first, use first, and then purchase the product for a large number of seats for your entire organization.
What gap in the market were you solving when you launched it?
So I think really the gap that I initially saw, so I told you a story about SaaS versus e-commerce, but the gap that I really honestly saw was a much more simpler, more technical gap, which was that there was, if you looked at any e-commerce company or any SaaS company that was, let's talk about an SMB. So let's talk about anywhere from 10 employees to 100 employees. If you look at this segment of the SaaS or e-commerce market, the marketing departments inside of it were using anywhere from 3 to 5 tools to do the marketing that I just described. So you typically had an analytics tool, and you typically had what we call a customer journeys tool. So a tool like Mixpanel, a tool like Customer IO, or you had a experimentation tool like Visual Website Optimizer doing your A/B tests and your personalization. So you at least had these 3 tools, and then usually what you would do is you would go, because they all had different representations of the user, the person that's actually you're marketing to. These 3 tools had 3 completely different versions of the user. You ended up buying something like a customer data platform, which was like a segment, typically from that Twilio purchased, in order to be able to stitch the customer profile, the user profile, really across these different products. Now, by the time you landed this type of tooling into a SMB marketing organization, you were dealing with a integration project. You weren't dealing with a simple marketing platform that you could just click, use. You were actually dealing with an engineering effort to just stitch tools together to get a consistent view of the customer that you were marketing to. And this was a fundamental problem that kept coming up over and over again as I was running my first company. And we were like, okay, what the market has really been misled into was that marketing across analytics, experimentation platforms, customer journey platforms, these 3 fundamental type of platforms. So your web, your email, your SMS, and your analytics, marketing across these channels and measuring it all is simple. It wasn't simple, and there was a lot of unsexy work that was involved and basically disconnected view of the user spread across these multiple platforms. So we started out with this first principle, with this fundamental is, hey, let's build a customer data platform, and then let's build a set of 3 fundamental tools that allow a marketer to take the entire journey, so acquire the user, convert the user, and then retain the user in one smooth platform without having to do your all tabs, like have a series of tabs open in the browser where you're like bouncing between these tools and trying to get your work done. So it was actually a more simpler technical realization. So we ended up solving the problem for e-commerce and mobile apps, and then SaaS product-led SaaS came along, and some of the same product principles applied, where the funnel was inherently measurable, and so we went in and solved the problem for SaaS companies as well. The realization was a more human one, which was that, hey, I got to get fundamental jobs to be done in marketing, and I got to run through 3 or 4 different tools, and the reports look different, the counts look different, the targeting in one tool is not applicable to the other. Just some really basic grinding work that marketers had to do. We wanted to eliminate it.
Well, you've already touched on this a little bit, but let's kind of dig into it a little bit more for those people who may not be familiar with CRM or marketing automation tools. You call Intempt a growth OS. So what does that mean, and how is it different from a traditional CRM or marketing automation tools?
Yeah. So the reason we call it a growth OS is because while we come in, much like a operating system, we come in and we provide some of the fundamental operations that must happen in marketing. So we provide the customer data platform, we provide the analytics platform, we provide the experimentation platform, and a fundamental orchestration engine. So allow you to touch the customer on email, on SMS, and on push notifications, right, for mobile apps. So we give you these fundamental operations and all the analytics operations as well. However, we integrate with many tools that help with what we call plumbing. So for example, we integrate with Twilio. Twilio provides a fantastic SMS infrastructure. We integrate with SendGrid. They provide fantastic email infrastructure. And we don't believe that these need to be rebuilt. They are absolutely solid at providing this type of infrastructure provisions to a marketing team. So that's why we call it a growth OS. We provide all of the applications that we think we can provide a lot of smooth value to the marketer. But when it comes to infrastructure, like email infrastructure, SMS infrastructure, we integrate with tools like Twilio, SendGrid, Google Workspace for email, Google Workspace for calendar. These types of tooling, these types of infrastructure tooling absolutely needs, in my opinion, no reinvention, must be integrated with. Stripe, for example, for payments, in order to be able to get payments data or revenue data into the platform. Stripe, again, is a fantastic payments infrastructure. We integrate with them, and so on. There's a whole list of 20 or 30 vendors that we provide integrations with that are best in class for the infrastructure they provide. So you can think of Growth OS as a marketing application, an orchestration application that integrates with long-term infrastructure investments that you've made today that are absolutely fantastic.
Well, you've designed it to serve teams across sales, marketing, and product. How did you align those departments around a single source of customer truth?
Yes, that's a fantastic question. So one of the things, and we really didn't mean to get into different departments, but we noticed, again, in small companies, we're talking like 10 to 100 employees. Again, the lines between a product manager or a product analyst and a marketer and a seller are increasingly blurred. And now when you bring AI into the mix and you bring AI agents helping you with marketing and selling and doing product work, like product analysis work or experimentation or A/B testing work, when you bring in these AI agents into your team as your core marketers or your co-product people, the lines are even more blurred between human and AI. And so not only are the lines blurred between humans and humans, they're also blurred with human and AI. When you get into companies that have, like I said, between 10 and 100 employees, you're looking at marketing teams of 2. You're looking at sales teams of 5. You're looking at product teams of 1 very often, and it happens to be just your head of product or product managers. I think these are pretty small teams, and we saw that especially in SaaS companies and especially in product-led SaaS companies, there are many initiatives in the organization where product marketing and sales need to work very closely together and almost overlap. A perfect example is if you look at onboarding in SaaS tools. If you ever try to onboard into a particular SaaS tool, which is a series of steps that you need to do to be able to onboard your team, your data, and be able to use that tool effectively in your organization, this onboarding process very often is an excellent example of how product teams, marketing teams, and sales teams must work together. I mean, sales certainly cares if you finish onboarding so they can sell you the tool. Marketing is, responsible to make sure that you start your onboarding and start a trial successfully and so on. So they're at least responsible to get you to that part of the onboarding process. And a product manager absolutely cares that that you don't churn out of the product and within a week or two of onboarding. So onboarding is an excellent example of how we saw product managers, marketing managers, and sales reps wanting to work very closely together to understand when to touch the customer and when to allow the product to do the job. We ended up kind of backpedaling ourselves or kind of just naturally helping product managers and marketers and sellers be able to interoperate. And the very fact that we didn't have to put rigid lines between what's a CRM and a sales rep world, and then what's a A/B testing tool and a marketer's world, we didn't have to put like rigid lines between that. We could all allow it in a smooth set of UIs that are just sort of right there, where you can choose to run an A/B test. You can in an onboarding process, you can choose to Slack a sales rep based on some behavior in the tool, and then pull them into the customer journey. These types of workflows being in the same tool, and it ended up being a very powerful differentiator for us when.
Which industries or company profiles are getting the most value out of Intempt today?
Yeah, I can tell you some customer stories. I mean, we've got customers from fintech, so folks that are involved in trading. So we've got trading platforms on Growth OS. That's one. I'll give you three kind of extreme customer examples to give you a sense of our customer base. So one is think about financial services, trading platforms. Second is mobile apps. So we've got a web app, an iOS and Android app that is in the video AI space. So this is a company that's doing real estate videos. They're actually doing photo to video ads through their software, and they optimize themselves on the Growth OS. So very different. The customer journey looks very different from someone who's trying to build a trading portfolio. And the third example I'll give is e-commerce, so toy companies. We've got someone just selling toys on the internet. So I think being able to acquire, convert, and retain, try to sell you a second toy that if you happen to buy a first one. So and you've got the usual discounts and your holiday sales and so on and on type of marketing models there. So yeah, very different companies. So think of us as e-com, fintech, and SaaS apps, really subscription based apps. They all have similar problems of being, like I said, being able to acquire a user, convert a user, retain a user, and we're able to cover that journey quite well.
Well, what's your philosophy around data-driven growth, and how has it evolved?
Yeah, it's another fantastic question. I could talk for hours about this, but I'll try to keep it succinct. So, I think we came from a world where, you had marketers look at tons and tons of segments, right? So you would create a customer segment, you take a look at, the customers in that segment, you create another one. And then you end up creating reports that were able to break down a certain funnel for that customer segment and try to arrive at insights, right? So I think the data-driven world has come a long way since being able to manually define events, manually define segments, manually define your reports, do filters, do breakdowns, and try to derive some insights. And then go back to your product teams or your marketing teams and say, hey, we think like these audiences and this type of campaigning or product building would work better for our audiences, right? So that's the world that I think we come from. And now you can go in with an agentic copilot. You can look at a chat window, like in the Growth OS, it's right on the left. You've got like a big old chat window. You can go and ask questions to the database. You can say, hey, can you build me an event that captures this behavior? Can you build me a segment? Can you build me a segment that you find to be insightful, you find to be promising, you find to be champions, you find to be at risk? Okay, great. Thank you for building me that segment. Can you build me a customer journey that goes and does a win back campaign or upsell campaign for this particular segment, and it goes and builds out the whole customer journey from doing a sequence of emails or doing emails and SMS interleaved. I mean, this is a far cry from the types of the round trip. Like, as one of my friends from Adobe is a very smart guy, Jared Cook, said on LinkedIn, we were having a little conversation. And he said, the real beauty of the stuff now is, marketing automation now is that the time that it used to take from going from insight to actual action. So going from when you actually manage to figure out that, this is what I should be, this is what my data is telling me, to the time at which you could go and have a marketing campaign actually touch customers based on that insight, has dramatically reduced. We're talking 10x reduction. I mean, it's literally gone from being, 10 weeks to 1 week, or 10 days to 1 day. I think the big difference in data-driven approaches and what Growth OS brings to the table is you compress that time from insight to action dramatically. And there's two reasons for it. One is AI, of course, and you've got the ability for agentic copilot to help you do this stuff. But the other reason simply is that when you've got all of your essential tooling in one platform and on one data set, the amount of time that it takes you don't have to jump from tool to tool, from concept to concept, from integration to integration. And so you've got these two big ideas of all-in-one Growth OS and an agentic copilot. You've dramatically reduced the time. And for smaller companies, when you've got 1 or 2 or 3 people max in the marketing and product organization, this is everything. You're able to squeeze out a lot more conversions for your time and for your money.
Well, you know this, but AI is becoming a co-worker for teams, right? From content creation to customer analytics. Intempt seems to have embraced this vision early with features like your AI coach and AI agents. Let's explore what that means for business today. What role does AI play inside Intempt's Growth OS? Is it an optimizer, an analyst, a strategist?
Yeah. So I touched upon this a little bit, but yeah, I'll cover all the different ways that we have currently operationalized. So we've currently shipped AI, and then we can kind of talk about some of the stuff on the horizon, which is wild, right? I mean, there's so much that's going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years in AI. But we'll just talk about what's live today and what's being used by our customers today. So the first thing I've already talked about, which is our agentic co-marketer, our coach. So this is very similar to many tools that have you call them an assistant, you call them an copilot. Instead of having to use the UIs yourself, you're able to ask them to create events, create segments, create journeys, create reports, create dashboards, create A/B tests for you, and so on, right? So that's one direction we're on. We've shipped a lot of features in that area, and we're going to continue in that area. So help me do marketing. My tool help me do marketing. My tool help me do selling. My tool help me do the analysis of my users and their behavior so I can make better product decisions, right? So this is one set of functionality that we built out over the last 2 years, really. The other set of functionality is not around generative AI, but it is fundamentally around copywriting. So one of the most hardest skills and the most notoriously difficult, it looks simple, but it's not, skills in marketing is copywriting. Are you able to write fantastic copy in situations like email versus SMS versus your web? And this is not trivial at all. So we've invested a lot into 2 real kinds of AI to help with this. One is, we call it a research agent. So one of the reasons that you can't write good copy is because you don't know your account and you don't know your user. So you don't know that you're selling to Nike, and you don't know that you're selling to a marketing manager for the sneaker category for women in Alabama for Nike, right? I mean, you just don't know these details about who you are emailing, who you are sending an SMS to. So we've built a research agent that's able to go and crawl the web and find out details about the accounts and the prospects that you are trying to market to. And with that research, you are then able to execute another, which is called our snippet AI, that's able to go generate a relevant snippet about Carl, let's say, who's running a podcast out of Alabama and loves talking about AI and marketing and sales systems, right? We're able to go and do the research on Carl and write a snippet about Carl. Now, this may sound, sort of obvious, but actually being able to do the work to build research agents and snippets or copywriting agents that operate on that research at scale for hundreds and thousands of people, and being able to generate email drafts, SMS drafts, pump them out on the screen and allow you to review all of them really, really quickly before you hit send, because you don't want AI slop to go out. People don't trust LLMs today. And being actually able to ship product that can do that is no mean feat, right? I mean, this took us a full year to just build this in such a way that we could actually operationalize it in production, including all of your drafts. And if you don't like a draft, you can regenerate just that draft, right? And then when you're happy with it, you can send it. But all the other drafts that you approve, you can go click send. So that's a second example of AI that's very different from the first, not just helping you build campaigns, but actually going in and doing copywriting for you at scale in a personalized one-to-one manner so that you don't have to go. And so all of these emails actually look written in your, by the way, we've got a full-blown brand kit, what we call a brand kit, where these emails that are written to Carl from Alabama running a podcast is written in my brand voice, my brand tone. Right? It's not written as if Nike was, let's say marketing to you, not, some other random brand that might want to talk very differently to you, right? So being able to do this type of on-brand copywriting at scale with allowing a marketer to then review it is one of the AI achievements that I think I'm personally very, very proud of, because I do know how notoriously hard it is to do good copywriting at scale. So much so that it's never been done. And all the personalization that gets done is hello, dollar first name, which is hello, Carl. Here you go. I'll just plop the same message to the rest of the message that I do to everybody else, right? So that's another example of AI that's been built in our system. And then there's several other types of machine learning based AIs. One of them is deliverability. So we understand really deeply how much to email. So we have caps on how many emails that any one person in the CRM can receive every day, what times of day, and we've got a lot of features around actually protecting a marketer from over marketing, which is another one of the very unique. We call it our deliverability AI, which is solving the problem of being able to actually reach your inbox. So don't oversaturate your customer's inbox with your marketing message. So space them out. And marketers make mistakes. They just like campaigns. They don't know that emails have been used in multiple campaigns. So a lot of these unsexy problems, in a way, we've got and solved at like a considerable amount of detail. And we all bucket them under AI. Some of them are machine learning oriented, such as send time optimization, and like I said, like spam control. One of others are around copywriting, and others are around just being able to generate insightful campaigns using LLMs. So many different kinds of.
Today, with all the AI stuff, as it continues to evolve, you mentioned that folks don't trust LLMs today, right? And for obvious reasons, right? Because they tend to hallucinate on occasion and all that kind of thing. Plus, inherent biases built in with the training. But privacy and compliance standards are huge, right? Everywhere we look, there's privacy's ramping up. So how do you train your AI models to predict customer behavior without breaching privacy or compliance standards?
Yeah. So that's another great question. So one of the things we built really, really early on, and I was pretty adamant in doing, because I'm close to I spend a lot of time in the UK as well as in the US. I'm close to the European market, and I've been close to GDPR legislation as well as the CCPA. So one of the things we did very early on when we built the CRM, or the customer data platform as it was called at the time, was we built out a full-blown privacy center. So every single user in the CRM has a clear consent mechanism stated up front for the marketer. So whether a marketer has no consent, or whether the marketer has a consent for a specific type of action, such as a newsletter enrollment versus another type of marketing campaign that they've received consent on or have not received consent on. So this type of consent management and being able to respect different types of consent when they're rolling out a campaign, as well as obvious things like if a user has requested to unsubscribe or to opt out, or requested for a deletion request, such as a GDPR or a CCPA delete, that will be processed by the platform, and they will not be enrolled in any marketing campaigns or any campaigns hereafter. So this type of functionality was built out, and you will be shocked as how many marketing automation platforms today do not have robust consent management, do not have robust privacy, because it is unsexy stuff. It takes several engineering cycles to build, and of course, there's always more important things to do. But we believe that privacy is an absolute essential, especially selling into European markets. So we ended up building this very, very early on in the history of the company. And we've always had like a really robust privacy center with a preference manager, all shipped out of the box, ready for you to use without having to build any of it yourself. And I'm glad you asked, because again, I think these are some of the unsexy things that people forget when they look at the newfangled or the new age AI platforms with all of the agentic AI, these AI SDRs flying around where you go off and, nurture a bunch of prospects and spam cannons and so on. Now, I think a lot of this stuff is uncool. I think a lot of this stuff is not very good marketing. I don't think a lot of this stuff has got much permission fundamental baked into it, and nobody seems to care. So I'm super glad you asked. The privacy center is something that I love to show marketers, because I'm like, can you show me if you've got this discipline in your organization? Especially in small companies, 8 times out of 10, the answer is no, we don't. And I go, well, you get this for free, by the way. We don't charge for it.
Well, it's good that you do that, because more than likely, if you don't, it's going to bite you in the end. And doing it up front, I think that makes you guys a differentiator from a lot of.
Yeah, thank you. I don't talk about it very often because, there's so much sexy stuff to talk about these days. But yeah, absolutely. You don't have to go out and buy another privacy system or consent management system. It's baked right into Growth OS. And by the way, it's across all the channels we serve. So web, email, SMS, all the channels that pump through the Growth OS, the privacy center applies to all of them.
In a world where everyone claims AI powered, what does responsible AI adoption look like to you?
Yeah, it's another real pretty deep question. I think I would not be so quick to answer that I understand AI and its potential exhaustively enough to say that I understand what responsible or ethical AI should look like going forward. I definitely think we're sort of in this wild, wild west stage where we're still kind of gunslinging on a lot of this, making it up as we go along, because, the technology is so new. And I think we're just about maybe this year seeing a little bit of a stabilization in the models and what they're able to do. But, I would say, I think as builders, as founders building in this space, I think we should apply some very simple first principles, which is, do you want to be the subject of marketing in, say you've got a question of being able to do scraping or to be able to do consent of some sort on a user? And do you want to be the subject of that type of marketing? And, if the answer is no, then maybe that should make its way into legislation. But even before that happens, which in a nascent industry, in an early industry, and it takes years for that to happen, maybe you shouldn't build products, and maybe you shouldn't, as an agency, you shouldn't do marketing that uses AI in ways that you would not wish it would be used upon yourself. So we get a lot of this question. We certainly are using AI very, very heavily, but I follow some simple rules. If you don't wish for it to be used upon, you or your family, don't bring it out into the world. And even simpler than that, if you aren't sure about that, just, don't be creepy. Don't be, trying to mine data on humans that is just plain old creepy. Like just keep it, keep it kosher.
Can you share some of the biggest gains your clients have seen after implementing AI-driven personalization or experimentation?
Yeah. So I've actually, I get to rattle off a customer story that just sort of happened earlier this week, which is a fantastic story. Usually we don't see these types of results that often. So there's one of our customers is in the event space, so in the travel space. So they are selling event management products to folks that are throwing events. So if you're a conference, you're organizing a conference, they help manage your conference bookings, your events for you. And they were able to achieve 9% increases in conversion rate, which is extremely meaningful for their business. And I won't disclose their pre-post revenue numbers out of this initiative, but a 9% increases in conversion rate right out of our platform using one channel. They just use one channel, and which is the email channel. So a pretty classic channel, a channel that is saturated and has the inboxes are busy and have all kinds of deliverability issues and so on. They were able to overcome all of that using data intelligently, being able to understand your audience intelligently, being able to understand their behavior on the web intelligently, and being able to reach out to them at the right time without overselling or selling too late. So a lot of timing by understanding signals or understanding the customer's behavior across channels, but they just use one channel to reach out. And by the way, they were even reluctant to send the third email to reach out. They just sent, like, they would send 2 emails and stop. So the campaign was very, very, I think was very healthy from a respectful from an outreach perspective. It was just well-timed. It understood data. It understood copywriting, like I spoke about. And they were able to get 9% increases in their conversion rates. So from baseline, I'm just rattling off about that one because it just happened this week, and we've been working with that customer for a few months. And a very classic story. They started out with us as many customers do in a small, controlled experiment manner, and now they're re-upping and rolling out at scale. So a super story, and we'll see if the 9% conversion rates hold up or if we have some changes in dynamics as we go along here, but we're pretty happy with the results.
That's impressive though. Yeah.
Yeah, I loved it. Yeah, I'm super stoked about it. And, we always love having these. And by the way, SMB, again, we're not talking like throwing like, ungodly amounts of money and resources at the problem. We've got a lean marketing team. We've got folks on our end working closely with the folks on their end. So lean, mean, growth OS machine. So it's fun.
Well, building an AI first company means you're not just selling technology, right? You're running on it internally. I'd love to talk about the operational and cultural side of scaling Intempt. What's been the most complex part of building an all-in-one data and automation platform? Is it the technology, people, or the process?
Yeah. And just to clarify, so Carl, the question is now about sort of the culture and the processes internally to be able to build out a product and a R&D and a go-to-market operations for this type of initiative. Yeah.
Right.
Listen, I'd be lying to you if I told you that this was simple at all. And in fact, if I knew how complex it would be to actually build out the research and development side of the house and the go-to-market side of the house, I think most of us would, rethink about being founders. But, for me, I honestly didn't know what it would be like. I sort of, like I said, and, I think of myself as an accidental founder, sort of a bit of a romantic. And then I did my first company because I just kind of to feel what it's like to be a founder. And then by the time I did my first company, and, then it was too late. I was kind of already just kind of, an entrepreneur. So I just did my second one. So sort of, I think, a accidental founder. And I really just went from building simpler companies with simpler operations to kind of more complex companies with more complex operations, I would say. And so this one's pretty complex. I mean, we've got a lot of pretty deep technology and R&D teams that have taken years to understand our code base and understand our processes, and we still have pretty challenging product builds, especially with AI. So it's certainly not easy to be in the research and development factory, and the engineers will back me up on that. And our go-to-market operations are actually, believe it or not, easier. And I think the reason for that is because we're just surrounded by marketers and sellers like a lot because of the work we do. So, we're helping so many marketing teams do their work that we just feel like we just somehow feel like our go-to-market operations are simpler. But perhaps if you ask my marketing lead, he would say, "What are you talking about?" Like, it's maybe because you're not doing it as much with me. But I think the go-to-market side of the house it's not simpler from a pipeline perspective. I think pipeline's really, really hard right now, like for all SaaS companies, I feel like, because of the major changes to the way search and LLMs work. But I think overall, from a operational perspective, like some of the operational, cadences of building marketing machines and building marketing engines are, I think, easier to grok. You've got to understand search, you've got to understand social, you've got to understand email, you've got to understand affiliates, you've got to understand agencies, and you've got to understand channels. So I think some of the dynamics of go to market, I think, are pretty much the same. You've got to be really good, like I say, at copywriting and at message and message market fit. And you've got to be really good at sort of these things. These things haven't really changed even within in the age of AI. But I think, pipeline's harder to build. Pipeline's harder to get. And so I think that's That's true. But I think when it comes to building research and development of building products today, it's absolutely topsy-turvy because of AI absolutely changing fundamentally how buyers perceive value in software. I think is completely getting upended, right? So I think when it comes to product building and AI, I think the change in operations to build AI first products is actually more dramatic than go-to-market operations. So I think a lot of go-to-market principles are going to stay sound, even in the face of changing LLMs and SEO going away and so on. But R&D operations and the mechanics of building software, huge changes there, like massive changes there in terms of how code is written, how code is tested, how code is pushed to production, and how much is written by AI, how much is written by humans. I think there's sea changes here, and we barely touched the tip of the iceberg and some of this stuff. So yes, I think it's a brave new world of building software companies. Period.
I agree with that. How do you foster collaboration between your data scientists, your product engineers, your customer success teams?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you just talk a lot, in Slack and and in a good old fashioned, just talk to each other more. Well, I think, look, having go back to just pitching the growth OS, but if you look at one of the older interviews of Jack Dorsey and you're talking about Twitter, and one of the big things they missed when they were trying to scale Twitter is they never had a proper view into what the customer was doing on Twitter. Like they didn't really know. So their product people the data scientists and the product people and the marketing people, they sort of didn't really understand what the average user on Twitter was actually doing because they did not have an idea, a deep, common set of reports and dashboards that told them that everybody agreed on. And so one of the ways I deeply do believe that product, marketing, sales teams, operations teams can all agree on the most important problems to solve in the company is really understand what your customers are doing, particularly if you have a digitally trackable customer journey. Understand what your customers are doing, and please, for the love of God, everybody look at the same data set. Don't go product teams and data warehouses, marketing teams sitting in Google Analytics, and then your sales guys in Salesforce or HubSpot and looking at three completely different views of the customer and that have aggregations built in that tell you completely different stories, and you make what you want to make out of that data to help you do your job. Please, for the love of God, if you've got a warehouse running and a Google Analytics running on one end and a Salesforce running on the third for your different departments, bring your data sets into one view of the customer journey and have your sales, marketing, and product people and your operations people look at that one view that you can all agree is an actual deduplicated view of the customer across the entire, from the first time you reached out to them, from when they churned out of your business, right? And I think just this simple discipline is, growth OS or not, this simple discipline is I think unmatched in its ability to foster the right kind of conversations. Otherwise, we all know how it goes in boardrooms or in large meetings. It becomes anecdotal, right? I spoke to this customer and let me tell you this story, and and then they take up the oxygen in the room, right? So I would highly recommend a customer journey discipline.
The pace of change in AI right now is just amazing, and it requires really good change management to be able to execute. How do you keep innovation moving fast without overwhelming your clients with too many new features?
Yeah. So that's true. It's absolutely true that you can build features a mile a minute today. And I think as product people, we all know that is one of the biggest mistakes you can make as a product person, is to just build hundreds of features because you can and overwhelm the customer with, a cockpit, right? You've got that, you walk into a cockpit of an airplane, of a flight, and you can't understand like anything of what's going on in that room. Only highly trained pilots can sort of understand what's going on in the cockpit, right? So don't do that. Please don't do that again, for the love of God, to your customers. Is just because you can have an Cloud Code like rip out 5 new features that were requested by a fringe part of your customer base and have that roll out to prod and think you're doing the customer a favor. You might be in the short term, But you have to go back and apply good old-fashioned product thinking that AI is not going to help you apply, because it requires a lot of judgment and being able to understand the real problems of the industry that you're trying to solve. Go back and apply good old-fashioned product judgment. Is what deserves to be productized, what deserves to be a one-off, right? Which could be a services engagement, or could be a manual process or another product to take care of it for the customer, versus what should be a core workflow in my product, and I must absolutely solve for a large portion of my customer base, and would genuinely make my product more differentiated in the market. This is a classic product manager or a founder or a builder's job that is not going to be answered by AI, that's not going to be answered by committee. It's good old-fashioned knowledge of the market, knowledge of the product, knowledge of technical debt that you're going to take on by building a feature. And you're going to have to just do this work. I know no other way other than using judgment. Yes, you can use an LLM to help you think through the problem, but you're going to have to apply good old-fashioned judgment to be able to do it. But yes, I would highly recommend against. And I see a lot of founders. Actually, I work with a lot of founders. I have a founders club in my Slack where I encourage a lot of founders to kind of just join and jam with me, and we learn from each other. And I see a lot of founders, especially non-technical founders, that say, "Hey, oh my God, I feel amazing because all of my ideas now that I've always had, I can just ship them to production." They will result in cluttered products. They will result in a lack of focus for the customer when they use your product workflows, and they will result in lower conversion rates in many, many cases. I mean, you are not Salesforce. You are not HubSpot. You do not have, thousands of customers, typically with hundreds and thousands of different use cases, and you absolutely need all of those features because you're just running at such massive complexity and scale. 99% of products don't need that. And even if you do need that, there's more elegant ways of designing and solving for a lot of those problems. But you can look at ChatGPT today. It's a fantastic example in product execution. I mean, there's not a lot of complexity in those UIs. I mean, you can go into Codex, you can go into Sora, you can go into many of their products, not just their core ChatGPT and ChatGPT Plus. I mean, there's just a lot of elegance in those UIs. You can look at Lovable, one of the SaaS darlings of the world now, coming out of the EU. 100 million, north of 100 million in ARR, and a lot of their product still retains a simple set of features that I could go on, and then yes. So I don't think the right way to use AI for product builders is to churn out hundreds of features just because you can. You're going to end up having to take on a lot of technical debt as you go along.
What internal processes or tools have been critical for scaling Intempt while staying agile?
My gosh, we use a lot of tooling, actually. A lot of fantastic tooling in the company, and we're super tool heavy. I can speak to some of the big ones. We use Linear for a lot of our R&D planning and execution. Fantastic product. We learn a lot from actually some of their ways they design their product. I think a lot of SaaS founders have learned a lot from Linear. It's a fantastic company. So that's one of the tools that's pretty central to R&D. Slack, of course, is central to a lot of our collaboration, not just internally within the company. We also have all of our customers in private Slack channels. That's been really cool. Started to love Slack over the years quite a bit. And what are some of the other standouts? I think, of course, GitHub, AWS. That's sort of there for almost the staples for everyone. So I'll skip mentioning them almost. But I think on the marketing side, we'll talk about some of the marketing tools. I think Descript, we use Descript a lot to do our video. It's an agentic video editor. And I think Descript is a fantastic tool, fantastic marketing team, by the way, out of San Francisco. They're just super, funky company, and great marketing team, great brand, and a product that just rocks. So we love Descript. So lately we've started using Gamma. And I want to shout out to the CEO at Gamma. They help us build slide decks, and again with agentic, with prompts, some beautiful slide decks, great layouts. And I think Gamma is doing a great job at really making AI solve some problems that have plagued marketers forever, which is creating beautiful decks quickly. So that's a fantastic tool. And then go on and on. We use Clay as well, which I think Clay is solve the big problem for us, which is being able to generate targeted lists of prospects using a lot of relevant prospect data, which has then allowed us to craft targeted campaigns to these prospects, so we don't have to just kind of spray and pray or spam cannon the in outreach. We would be pretty surgical about it. And I think Clay's been really instrumental and helpful in that. And I could go on and on. There's tons of marketing, sales, and product tools that we use, and of course we're very, very deep users of. We drink our own champagne, and we use the Growth OS very heavily for our product sales and marketing workflows. So with our agentic capabilities, so yeah, we very much use our own product to eliminate several products. So, but yeah, there's certainly, I think there's some fantastic products in the space, and we use a lot of them. I'm skipping so many products. I'm trying to think on the fly, but yeah, tons of products.
How do you think about balancing automation efficiency with the human touch in customer engagement?
Yeah, another great question. I think it touches upon what I think is very trendy today, which is to say, hey, let's throw an AI SDR and kind of fire my SDR team, and we'll just run like an automated sales operation to get customers that are ready to buy somehow on a A's calendar, sales reps calendar. And I think this couldn't be further away from the truth. And this is coming from a company that we run AI. I don't even call it AI SDR, but we run AI SDR campaigns, which really are just email campaigns that a sales rep, I don't even call it a go-to-market engineer. You don't need to be an engineer to use our systems. It's just a sales rep that is able to scale themselves, because you're able to, instead of crafting 10 to 15 personalized emails per day to your prospects, you're now able to craft 10x that. You're able to do 100 personalized emails a day, and therefore you're able to be 10 times more efficient in your work, and that happens to be enough. After you send your emails and you receive replies, you're able to do some kind of reply automation, which is a lot less automated than the initial sends. You have to look carefully at the replies. You have to classify. We've got a reply agent in our platform. It's another one of our AIs, by the way, where you have to classify the reply. So interested, not interested, meeting booked in some cases, unsubscribed in other cases. So there's a message classification that happen on replies. And in some cases, AI is able to automatically craft a reply to a reply. So if a prospect replied, able to craft a reply. And again, the sales rep can look at it and say, okay, I'm happy with it, hit send. There's a lot of a delicate dance between being able to generate the first email, get it approved by the rep, being able to automatically craft replies, get it approved by the rep, and allow a rep to connect themselves, like I said, instead of having to manually be an email junkie all day, right? So I think this is the future. I mean, the future is humans are directors of AI, and the AI is working for them at their behest. And this is the future of AI-assisted sales, not some kind of, AI is running around and being like a 10 to 15 person AI team or AI SDR team with, no sellers or one seller. Mm-hmm. I don't think that this is really an interesting outcome. And I don't think if you're selling good products with good margins in a good market, you really need to be, getting rid of sales teams. It doesn't really make sense. People like buying from people. People like feeling a sense of trust when they buy. People have some level of, it's not always, I think it's a big myth that like the cheapest and the best product is just purchased and that's all that matters. I think absolutely having a relationship with a business where you can have your questions answered and talk to humans is valid. Talk to, Intercom's a great company, another great company. They have a Fin, they have a support agent. Be able to talk to agents that, even if you're talking to an AI, being able to talk to an AI that's been so deeply trained by a human to cover a lot of the questions that get asked. I mean, let's not forget, Fin has been trained on your business. Intercom, by the way, we use Intercom. They're a fantastic tool, but we've deeply trained it on many, many thousands of conversations and customer scenarios that it's able to actually answer like a human would. And very often we would say the exact same thing as a human, right?
Mm-hmm.
And let's not forget, this has been trained by a human with countless conversations and countless hours of training and tweaking. So I think you want to deeply humanize, in my opinion, your business, even if you're doing it with AI. So I think that absolutely less and less grunt work, more and more repeated Q&A, whether it's on email for selling or whether it's on email or phone for support, will be assisted by AI, and that's fantastic. But humans are the ones that are going to be closely setting the standards for the brand.
Right. Intempt's promise to give every company enterprise-level AI growth tools feels like a glimpse of the future of SaaS itself, right? So let's look ahead at what's next. What's your long-term vision for Intempt? Where do you see the platform in 5 years?
Yeah, this is a superb question. And, I have a really hard time answering this question because, 5 years ago, if you certainly asked me, hey, would we be dealing with some of the sales and marketing workflows that we're dealing with today, I don't think I'd be able to imagine it. I mean, just the workflows I shared with you today around AI being able to generate drafts at scale and allow a sales rep to have a fundamentally different relationship with technology than they did 2 years ago. LLMs were not there, and I wouldn't have been able to imagine that necessarily. So it's kind of a hard question to answer. It'd be an easier question to answer without AI, but it's sort of a hard question to answer with AI. But I think, I'm into my second company. I'm 10 years, in as a founder, give or take, by 8 years in as a founder. I'm very impact driven. I'm very mission driven founder. I want to see marketing, sales, and product teams build fantastic product-led businesses, whether it's e-commerce, whether it's fintech, whether it's SaaS, and highly efficient, customer-centric, customer-relevant businesses that have products that are just a delight to use because the customer experience from first touch to, like I say churn. Churn's not always a bad thing. Customers do have end of life on products. But that entire customer journey is highly relevant to the customer. I think that if that kind of impact and AI can assist that kind of impact in 5 years, and sort of I'm a part of that, and Intempt Technologies and myself as an extension of it is a part of that curve. I think that my ambition and sort of my intellectual itch, if you will, would be satisfied.
How do you see customer growth automation evolving as AI models become more autonomous?
Customer growth, customer journey, customer growth automation. Can you maybe help me understand a little bit about?
Let's just say the customer journey. How do you see that? How did the customer's journey evolve as AI models become more autonomous?
Yeah, this is a superb question. So I think one thing that we'll definitely see, that already seeing happening, is websites are starting to collapse a bit. So what I mean by that is typically what you would do is, as a user, right? What you would do is you would go to an e-commerce site or, a SaaS company, and you would go dig, right? Page, click, page, click, page, click. And you try to find what you really want, right? So you would do this discovery process and this learning process, education process, and you would go and dig through websites, and that would be a customer journey, right? You'd spend maybe 30 minutes to buy a t-shirt, or you'd spend 3 hours to research a SaaS product. Doesn't really matter, but you'd go click by click by click by click, right? Sometimes you'd chat, sometimes you'd click, sometimes you'd try a product, virtual try-ons in e-commerce or software try-ons, right? You would have this whole learning process that you would go through, and this would typically be your customer journey. And we're sort of seeing it collapse in a way, which is really interesting for a customer journey company to see the customer journey sort of collapse. So what we're seeing is, instead of going to websites, you're now going to the LLM and you're saying, hey, I want to buy this type of software. I want to buy a t-shirt, and I want to buy a pair of shoes. I want advice on some purchase. So you're starting to see this happen more and more in the LLMs, and LLMs are sucking in the website, right? So you're seeing this whole LLM suck in the website and provide you that answer inside of Gemini, inside of ChatGPT, and not necessarily in the search engine. So you're seeing the search bar collapse. You're seeing it happen in the LLMs. And because this is more of this customer journey is happening inside of the LLM, you're seeing the website collapse. You're not seeing as much usage inside of the website anymore, right? Because you feel more confident, you feel more educated. You don't feel like you need to go into a SaaS company and 50 pages to sort of learn about whether this is right for you, or e-com for that matter. Dig through a bunch of categories and products and search bars and search results. And so, I think we're seeing the website collapse now. Not really collapse in a way, right? Because the website's still irrelevant. They have to still be there. They have to have these FAQs, right? So what's happening is we're seeing pages. You're developing all these pages on the website and putting a bunch of FAQs inside of these pages because LLMs love FAQs and they like to parse this markup, and they like influence answers through these FAQs. So we're actually seeing a lot of websites, and Webflow is a really good example, by the way. Some really smart guys at Webflow doing growth and SEO and GEO, generative engine optimization at Webflow, working with SEO companies and restructuring their web pages to have a lot of FAQs built into them. So I think we're seeing the nature of websites change. We're seeing agents crawling websites, not humans. We're seeing FAQs being pulled from websites into the LLM, and the customer journey shifting from being the website being human optimized to being human and LLM optimized, right? Yeah, that's one big change in the customer journey. I mean, there are probably others, but that's one that I'm very, very close to because, we look at website traffic a lot and be able to determine customer behavior. And we're seeing a lot about traffic. We're seeing a lot of LLM traffic in addition to humans browsing websites today.
It's very interesting. Do you see AI agents eventually making real-time operational decisions across marketing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. I actually do think so. I think we're pretty early on. Yeah, I mean, I don't have a quick example, of that, but definitely. But give me, maybe Carl, do you have some examples of maybe what you mean by operational decisions, sort of in marketing, or what are you thinking about there?
Well, the question is kind of more around trust, right? And I think at least from my perspective, it's going to take a little bit longer for people to get really comfortable with AI and AI making decisions for them. That's kind of where I was trying to go with it. I don't think the trust level's quite there yet, but eventually I think as people are exposed to it more and more every day, I think that the trust level is going to increase, and then more companies are going to be willing to leverage AI for helping them make operational decisions.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you a quick story that happened today, actually. We signed up for a Gamma Pro subscription. I was talking about this agentic slide builder, and we signed up for a Pro subscription. We used a coupon code. We were part of Lenny's newsletter. So we're part of we get for $200 a year, we get access to many SaaS tools as part of that subscription. So we signed up for Gamma Pro and we used our coupon code from Lenny, but I mistakenly used it for a monthly sub instead of a yearly sub. And expired after a month, and we were like, what happened? I thought we had a sub for a year, right? So I contacted support, and I got a series of replies back from a support agent that was not human. It was an AI, and it disclosed itself as an AI. And it got a bit wound up in the situation because it was an unusual situation enough where you have a coupon code used for monthly, but it's supposed to be used for yearly, and the customer is like, well, what happened to my subscription? So it got confused a bit, but not too badly, right? And you had sort of a human on that same support thread. You had a human come in and talk about, hey, I understand the situation. And you had the AI going and saying, are you satisfied? If not, I'll keep digging. And it was answering you. So you had a very interesting thread where you had AI answering my support question. You had a human answering my support question. And I was talking to both of them in the same email thread. And I was quite enjoying it in a way. And then AI was on point and was answering relevantly, but admittedly was confused about what to do here. And then you had a human jumping in. So I think we're getting to this AI. Think of AI agents and think of them as junior employees, right? So you're in a conversation, you're watching a junior employee talk to one of your customers in a situation. And if they make a mistake, you're going to just jump right in and say, hey, actually, I'm happy to help with that. Just give me a minute here, right? So this is very similar to what happens in a lot of call centers, right? You've got a junior person talking, but a senior person is able to hear that conversation, is not stepping in until they absolutely have to. So I think that's sort of where we are. We're in supervised control of AI as a junior marketer or a junior sales rep, right? Trying to sell, trying to market and deal with a situation. And if they're doing a good job, then you're not going to have a senior rep step in. But
great way to look at it. Absolutely. I think that's a great way to look at it.
So that's what happened today, believe it or not. with Gamma Pro. I'm still trying to get it sorted though. That's funny. So I ended up reaching out to their CEO to say, hey, can you help me out here because I'm getting a bit of a dangle here with the subscription. But it's just fun. But it's cool. I mean, it's working out. It really is.
Well, what advice would you give to founders building AI first platforms?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of founders are doing amazing work in AI, building AI first platforms. But look, I would say some things have really changed, which is, if you're looking at a credits-based or usage-based model instead of a SaaS subscription model, if a traditional subscription model, I think that's a dramatic difference. And you have to deal with a lot of different set of problems, such as being able to optimize for inference cost and being able to understand your margins and not going topsy-turvy and all of that. So I think there's a whole thing around usage-based pricing and monetization models that is pretty fascinating. But I would say, aside from finance being brought in much earlier into the product equation than that ever happened before, building like early stage companies, I think what I would tell AI founders is what I tell myself, is some of the product principles around building products has not changed at all. So build a highly retentive piece of software, right? Or a highly retentive product buying or product experience. Like build that right in. You had to do this 5 years ago. You had to do this 10 years ago. You had to do this 3 decades ago when Apple was building the Macintosh. I mean, it was a highly retentive piece of hardware, and those principles have absolutely not changed. If somebody does not love your product, if somebody does not want to use it again, if somebody does not want to have a high NPS, if somebody doesn't want to tell their friends about it, AI or no AI, you're in hot water, amigo. So go build, as Y Combinator famously said, build something people love. That's not changed. Now, if you're able to use AI to build something that feels magical and that people love, more power to you. But regardless, build something people love and want to use every single day, and everything else will work itself out. How much you should charge for it, how you should get distribution on it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, is all going to work itself out if you've got your first product principles straight, which is build something highly valuable that people really want to use every single day, either with their own hands or plug into their infrastructure and have it be used. Regardless, right? Regardless, it must become a part of daily habit. And if that's the case, then you're going to win. So that's the kind of simple product mantras we try to follow around here instead of complicating it beyond that. And you can have the most magical features, and if they're toys, right? As we see a lot of AI agents right now, they're toys. They don't make it to production. They get used once or twice, and then sort of people go like, oh, that was fun, right? But I couldn't be bothered to use it in my daily life. And I think if you're getting into those types of agentic like product patterns, and you're seeing a lot of acquisition, like a lot of traffic come in, for example, and you're seeing a lot of experimental, a few dollars being spent on your product and then getting dumped, watch out. Like you're not building something that anyone finds useful in their daily lives, and you're gonna have a hard time.
That's great advice. If there's one thing you want businesses to understand about AI's role in growth, what would that be?
Well, I would think from the conversations I have is with humans and AI, understand that really it's not AI versus you, it's AI with you. And it's more importantly, as growth professionals, marketing, sales, or product that are trying to build businesses and trying to get a stable of customers under your umbrella, you must use AI to be fundamentally better marketers, product people, and sellers. And it is absolutely, there isn't an AI right now. I don't, like I said, the best you're going to get in 2025 and 2026 is a junior marketer, a junior seller, and a junior product person that's able to be supervised by you. And you must take that approach of being a senior product or a senior marketer or a senior seller and have a bunch of junior AIs working for you to help to amplify your impact in your day-to-day job. That's absolutely the role I think that humans must take now. I tell my research and development team this every single day, is use AI to be super powered. And I tell my go-to-market team the very same thing. And they've started using products, like I said, like Descript and Gamma. And the R&D team is using Codex and Devin, Cursor now as these products to empower themselves to just be fundamentally more powerful builders and sellers. So that's my advice to growth pros is Don't worry about AI. Just think of it as yet another tool that is going to help you be a better growth pro.
Well, Sid, this has been a fascinating look into how AI is transforming the science of growth. For anyone listening who's trying to make their customer data actionable, Intempt is showing what's possible when intelligence meets execution. Where should our listeners go if they want to find out more?
Yeah, thank you so much for that opportunity. Intempt.com, Intempt.com is where we're housed. If you want to reach out to me personally, it's LinkedIn/in/Sid Chaudhary, SIDCHAUDHARY, or just search Sid Chaudhary, and I'm sure I'll pop up. So yeah, happy to connect. You can always email me as well, sid@intempt.com. I answer every relevant email that's addressed personally to me and references something about me that's not out of a spam cannon. I answer every single one of those. So sid@intempt.com. I'm on LinkedIn as well. And of course, if you're interested in the Growth OS, then please check out intempt.com.
And if you're thinking about how to operationalize AI inside your own business, that's exactly where we can help at Protelligent. Until next time, ask better questions, build smarter systems, and stay on the edge of intelligence.